What's going on YouTube? Listen up, young elder gang. This is Vince O'Connor at You With Another Banger. Please make sure you like, subscribe, and share this video, fam. I hope this video get at least 100,000 likes. In this video, you will find history, definitions, scripture, information, and best of all, what we Americans have been deprived of from the beginning, the truth. Keep in mind, this content used in this video is intended for entertainment, educational, and informational purposes only. We will give you the total truth as we best understand it today. Be sure to hit that like button, young elder gang. Hit that subscribe button if you're new to the channel. Hit that bell and don't forget to check back with us every day for new content. You need to hear this if you're native to Turtle Island. Indigenous peoples of Turtle Island are the people who are native to North America. The term Turtle Island is used by many indigenous peoples in North America to refer to the continent. The name comes from indigenous creation stories and oral histories that tell of a turtle that holds the world on its back. The concept of Turtle Island is significant in many Native American cultures because it reflects their relationship with Mother Earth and their spiritual beliefs. It involves respect for nature and ancestors, seeing the land as a relative to be cared for, sustainability, respect for the environment, and understanding the interconnectedness of all living things. The American Indian Wars were more than just battles. They shaped the nation. For over 250 years, fierce battles raged between Native Americans and European settlers. These conflicts, known as the American Indian Wars, saw indigenous tribes fighting to protect their land, resources, and way of life. It wasn't just settlers they faced. The English, French, Spanish, and eventually the U.S. Army all got involved. The stakes were high, and so were the losses. Entire tribes were decimated, native lands were seized. Survivors were forced onto reservations far from their ancestral homes. This dark chapter ended in tragedy for many indigenous communities. But it's a story we need to remember, to honor the resilience and courage of those who fought for their people. The Battle of Manila Bay, which took place on May 1, 1898, saw the decisive defeat of the Spanish Pacific Fleet by the U.S. Navy under Commodore George Dewey, effectively marking the beginning of American occupation in the Philippines during the Spanish-American War. This battle was a complete victory for the Americans, with minimal losses and the destruction of the entire Spanish naval force in the area, paving the way for the eventual surrender of Manila to American forces. Key points about the Battle of Manila Bay. Leaders: Commodore George Dewey commanded the American Asiatic Squadron, while the Spanish fleet was stationed in Manila Bay. Keep in mind, the Asiatic are the Moors. Outcome: the American fleet completely destroyed the Spanish ships, suffering almost no casualties themselves. Significance: this battle essentially handed the Philippines over to the United States, contributing significantly to the American victory in the Spanish-American War. The Tiguex War was a conflict between Spanish explorer Francisco Vázquez de Coronado's forces and the indigenous Tiguex Pueblo people in present-day New Mexico, where the Spanish ultimately won a decisive victory, resulting in the destruction of many Tiguex villages and the displacement of the native population due to their superior weaponry and horseback tactics. The war lasted from December 1540 to March 1541, with hundreds of Tiguex people killed and many villages burned down. Key points about the Tiguex War. The battle primarily took place in the Tiguex province, which is now located near Bernalillo, New Mexico, along the Rio Grande River. The conflict arose when Coronado's expedition arrived in the region seeking gold and other riches, demanding supplies and attempting to subjugate the Tiguex people. The Spanish utilized their superior weaponry, including firearms and horses, to overwhelm the Tiguex warriors. The Spanish achieved a decisive victory, forcing the Tiguex people to abandon their villages and flee to more remote areas. The Mixtón War, 1540-1542. The Mixtón War, fought between 1540 and 1542, was a major rebellion by the indigenous Caxcan people against Spanish rule in what is now central Mexico, primarily led by a leader named Tenamaxtl, also known as Francisco Tenamaxtl. The conflict culminated in the Spanish capture of the native stronghold of Mixtón, effectively crushing the rebellion and leading to widespread brutality against the Caxcan people, including forced labor and executions by the Spanish forces under Viceroy Antonio de Mendoza. Key points about the Mixtón War. The Caxcan people were resisting Spanish attempts to subjugate them and exploit their land, particularly due to harsh labor conditions imposed by the Spanish. The Caxcan rebellion was led by Tenamaxtl, who successfully defended the fortified town of Mixtón against Spanish attacks for a period. Viceroy Antonio de Mendoza mobilized a large Spanish force to quell the rebellion, eventually laying siege to Mixtón. After a prolonged struggle, the Spanish captured Mixtón in early 1542, leading to the collapse of the Caxcan resistance. Following the defeat, the Caxcan people faced severe reprisals including mass executions, forced labor in mines, and displacement from their lands. In early 1542, the stronghold of Mixtón fell to the Spaniards, and the rebellion was over. In the aftermath of the natives' defeat, thousands were dragged off in chains to the mines, and many of the survivors, mostly women and children, were transported from their homelands to work on Spanish farms and haciendas. The Chichimeca War, fought between 1550 and 1590, saw the Spanish struggle to conquer the nomadic Chichimeca people in present-day Mexico, ultimately leading to a stalemate where the Spanish abandoned military force and instead used a strategy of purchase for peace to assimilate the Chichimecas by providing them with land, tools, and livestock in exchange for their submission and adoption of a settled agricultural lifestyle. This effectively ended the war without a decisive military victory for either side, with most Chichimecas eventually integrating into Spanish society through a process of cultural assimilation. Key points about the Chichimeca War. The Chichimecas, this indigenous group, was nomadic and skilled archers, making them difficult to defeat in traditional warfare due to their hit-and-run tactics and knowledge of the terrain. Spanish challenges. The Spanish initially attempted to conquer the Chichimecas through military force, but their campaigns proved largely ineffective against the guerrilla-style resistance. Purchase for peace. To end the conflict, the Spanish shifted strategy, offering land, livestock, tools, and religious instruction to the Chichimecas in exchange for their submission and adoption of a settled lifestyle. Assimilation. Over time, many Chichimecas accepted the Spanish offers and became integrated into the colonial society, although some continued to resist. In the Navajo Wars, primarily led by Colonel Christopher Kit Carson, the U.S. military employed a brutal, scorched earth tactic against the Navajo people, burning their villages and destroying their livestock, forcing them to surrender and subsequently march hundreds of miles on foot to a reservation in New Mexico known as the Long Walk, where they endured harsh conditions at the Bosque Redondo Reservation before eventually being allowed to return to a smaller portion of their ancestral land through a treaty in 1868. This event is considered a major defeat for the Navajo people and a significant chapter in the history of Native American displacement by the U.S. government. Key points about the Navajo Wars. Leader, Colonel Kit Carson. Tactics, Scorched Earth Campaign. Destroying Navajo villages and livestock. Outcome, Navajo surrender. Forced relocation to Bosque Redondo Reservation through the Long Walk. Impact, thousands of Navajo deaths, cultural disruption, eventual return to a smaller reservation through treaty. The Anglo-Powhatan Wars, fought between 1610 and 1646, were a series of 3 conflicts between English colonists in Virginia and the Powhatan Native American tribe, ultimately resulting in the Powhatans' defeat and significant loss of land, with the final war ending with the capture and killing of Powhatan leader Opechancanough, effectively solidifying English control over the region. Key points about the Anglo-Powhatan Wars. Multiple wars. The conflicts were divided into 3 distinct wars, with the first starting in 1609, the second in 1622, and the third in 1644. Causes of conflict. The primary cause was increasing English expansion into Powhatan territory, particularly due to the desire for land to cultivate tobacco, leading to growing tensions over resource access and land rights. Pocahontas's marriage. A brief period of peace was established after the marriage of Pocahontas, a Powhatan woman, to English settler John Rolfe in 1614, marking the end of the First War. The Indian Massacre of 1622. The Second War was triggered by a surprise attack by the Powhatan on English settlements, resulting in significant casualties for the colonists. Opechancanoug's leadership. The Third War was primarily led by Opechancanough, who aimed to resist further English encroachment. The English ultimately prevailed in all 3 wars, significantly reducing the Powhatans' power and forcing them to cede large amounts of land, effectively establishing English dominance in the region. The Pequot War, which took place between 1636 and 1638 in New England, resulted in a decisive defeat for the Pequot tribe against an alliance of English colonists from the Massachusetts Bay, Plymouth, and Saybrook colonies, alongside Native American allies like the Narragansett and Mohegan tribes. The war culminated in a massacre at Mystic Fort, where hundreds of Pequots were killed, and the surviving Pequot were either dispersed or sold into slavery, effectively destroying the tribe as a unified force. Key points about the Pequot War. Growing tensions between the Pequot tribe and English colonists over land disputes and escalating violence. The Mystic Massacre at Mystic Fort, where English forces and their native allies attacked a large Pequot village, killing a vast majority of its inhabitants. The Pequot were decisively defeated, with many killed in battle and the remaining survivors scattered or sold into slavery. The war significantly reduced the Pequot population and led to the English colonists solidifying their control over the region. The Beaver Wars were a series of violent conflicts between various Native American tribes, primarily the Iroquois Confederacy, fighting for control of the lucrative beaver fur trade in the Great Lakes region during the 17th century. The Iroquois, utilizing their alliances with European powers, largely dominated the wars, decimating several tribes like the Hurons, Neutrals, and Eries, forcing many others westward and significantly altering the power dynamics in the region, eventually leading to the Treaty of Grande Paix in 1701 to establish peace between the warring factions. Key points about the Beaver Wars. The growing demand for beaver pelts in Europe led to intense competition among Native American tribes to secure access to beaver hunting grounds. Main combatants, the Iroquois Confederacy, primarily against tribes like the Hurons, Neutrals, Eries, and various Algonquin groups. Tactics. The Iroquois used aggressive warfare tactics including surprise attacks, ambushes, and brutal massacres. The Beaver Wars resulted in the destruction of several Native American confederacies, large population displacement, and significant changes to the political landscape of the Great Lakes region. As a result of this conflict, the Iroquois destroyed several confederacies and tribes through warfare. The Hurons, or Wendat, Erie, Neutral, Wenro, Petun, Susquehannock, Mohican, and Northern Algonquins whom they defeated and dispersed, some fleeing to neighboring peoples and others assimilated, routed, or killed. Kieft's War was a brutal conflict between Dutch colonists in New Netherland and local Native American tribes, primarily the Munsee people, sparked by the aggressive policies of Dutch director Willem Kieft, leading to widespread massacres of Native Americans and devastating retaliatory attacks on Dutch settlements, ultimately resulting in a Dutch victory but with heavy casualties on both sides. Kieft was later recalled to the Netherlands due to his role in the war's brutality. Key points about Kieft's War. Kieft demanded tribute payments from the native tribes, and when they refused, he used minor incidents as a pretext to launch a large-scale attack, massacring hundreds of unarmed Native Americans in villages like Pavonia, present-day Jersey City. The war led to widespread violence and destruction across the region, with both Dutch settlers and Native Americans suffering significant losses. After initial aggression, the Dutch eventually managed to subdue the native tribes through force, forcing them to pay tribute and effectively securing Dutch control over the territory. Kieft's War is considered a significant example of the brutal colonial conflicts between European settlers and indigenous populations, highlighting the destructive potential of unchecked aggression and mistrust. The Peach War refers to a one-day attack on the Dutch colony of New Amsterdam on September 15, 1655, by a group of Munsee Native Americans, where they raided the settlement, killing around 40 colonists and taking over 100 captives, primarily women and children, due to a dispute reportedly sparked by a Dutch colonist shooting a native woman for stealing peaches. This event is also sometimes called the Peach Tree War. Key points about the Peach War. Cause: the conflict is believed to have been triggered by a Dutch colonist killing a native woman who took peaches. Attackers: the Munsee tribe, a group of Native Americans. Target: New Amsterdam, the Dutch settlement in present-day New York City. Outcome: the Dutch were overwhelmed, suffering significant casualties and being forced to surrender. The Esopus Wars were a series of violent conflicts between Dutch settlers in the Hudson Valley and the indigenous Esopus tribe, marked by raids, hostage-taking, and ultimately the near destruction of the Esopus people, with the Dutch forces eventually prevailing by killing their chief, Papaquanehan, and scattering the tribe, effectively ending the war. This occurred primarily in the mid-17th century, with the most significant battles taking place between 1659 and 1664. Key points about the Esopus Wars. Cause of conflict: tensions arose due to land disputes, cultural misunderstandings, and competition for resources between the Dutch settlers and the Esopus tribe. Major events: the Esopus launched raids on Dutch settlements, destroying crops, killing livestock, and taking hostages, while the Dutch retaliated with military campaigns, burning villages and attempting to subdue the tribe. Turning point: the Dutch, led by Captain Martin Cregier, tracked down and killed the Esopus chief, Pt.1, which significantly weakened the tribe and led to their dispersal. The Esopus were forced to sign a peace treaty, ceding their land to the Dutch and effectively ending their presence in the region. The Chowanoc War, which took place between 1675 and 1677, saw the Albemarle County colony in North Carolina fight against the Chowanoc Native American tribe, ultimately resulting in a colonial victory, forcing the Chowanoc to cede most of their land and relocate to a reservation on Bennett's Creek, now part of modern-day Gates County, North Carolina. Key points about the Chowanoc War. Conflict: the Chowanoc tribe, who had previously signed a peace treaty with the colonists, engaged in warfare against the English settlers near the Albemarle Sound. Colonial leader Peter Jenkins commanded the colony's army during the conflict. Outcome: after 2 years of fighting, the colonists prevailed, forcing the Chowanoc to surrender their territory. Aftermath: following the war, the Chowanoc were relocated to a designated Indian reservation. In King Philip's War, the English colonists ultimately defeated the Native American coalition led by Metacom, also known as King Philip, decimating the Wampanoag tribe and their allies, resulting in the loss of vast amounts of native land and the deaths of thousands of Native Americans, while also causing significant damage to English settlements in New England. The war ended with Metacom's capture and execution in August 1676, marking a major turning point in the colonization of the region. Key points about King Philip's War. The combatants: the Wampanoag tribe, led by Metacom, King Philip, fought against the English colonists of Plymouth and Massachusetts Bay colonies, sometimes with allies like the Narragansett tribe. Cause of the war: growing tensions over land encroachment by the colonists, coupled with restrictions on Native American culture and freedoms. Major events: early Native American successes. Initially, the Native American forces inflicted significant damage on English settlements, raiding towns and killing colonists. Turning point: the Battle of the Great Swamp Fight, also known as the Narragansett Massacre, where the colonists inflicted heavy losses on the Narragansett tribe, significantly weakening their alliance. Metacom's death. After a long campaign, Metacom was tracked down and killed by the colonists led by Captain Benjamin Church. Outcome: the English colonists won the war, effectively destroying the Wampanoag power and leading to further expansion of English settlements into Native American lands. Aftermath: many Native Americans were killed, captured, and sold into slavery, while the surviving Wampanoag population was significantly reduced and displaced. How did King Philip's War end? After 14 months of horrific fighting, the Narragansett were finally defeated in 1676 and their chief was killed, while the Wampanoag and the other tribes were gradually subdued by the colonist army. In King William's War, primarily fought between English colonists and French forces in North America, the French and their Native American allies launched successful raids on English settlements, notably attacking Schenectady, New York, Salmon Falls, New Hampshire, and Casco Bay, Maine, while the English attempts to capture French territories were largely unsuccessful, resulting in a stalemate that ended with the Treaty of Ryswick in 1697. The war was marked by brutal frontier warfare, with heavy reliance on Indian tactics by the French side. Key points about King William's War. Conflict. This war was part of a larger European conflict between England's William III of Orange and France's Louis XIV. Main tactic used by French, utilizing Native American allies to carry out surprise attacks on English settlements along the frontier. Notable attacks: the burning of Schenectady, New York, and raids on Salmon Falls and Casco Bay. English attempts. English forces tried to capture French territories like Acadia, but were largely unsuccessful. End of the war. The Treaty of Ryswick in 1697 brought an end to the conflict. During Queen Anne's War, 1702 to 1713, primarily fought between England and France in North America, England gained control of territories like Newfoundland, Nova Scotia, and the Hudson Bay region from France. As stipulated by the Treaty of Utrecht, which ended the war, this occurred through a combination of land battles, naval engagements, and raids by both sides, often involving Native American allies, with the most significant outcome being the British acquisition of Acadia, present-day Nova Scotia, from the French. Key points about Queen Anne's War. Main combatants, England, Great Britain, and France, with various Native American tribes allied with each side. Cause, part of the larger War of Spanish Succession in Europe, where England and its allies fought against France and Spain. Major events, English attacks on French settlements in Acadia, including the capture of Port Royal, now Annapolis Royal. French and Native American raids on English frontier settlements, notably the Deerfield Massacre. British naval dominance in the North Atlantic, leading to the capture of French ships. End of the war, the Treaty of Utrecht in 1713, where France ceded Acadia, Newfoundland and Hudson Bay territory to Britain. In 1712, Britain and France declared an armistice, and a final peace agreement was signed the following year. Under terms of the 1713 Treaty of Utrecht, Britain gained Acadia, which they renamed Nova Scotia, sovereignty over Newfoundland, the Hudson Bay region, and the Caribbean island of St. Kitts. In the Battle of the Tuscarora War, which culminated on March 23, 1713, colonial militiamen led by Colonel James Moore attacked and defeated the Tuscarora Indian stronghold at Fort Neohoroka, effectively ending the war by killing or capturing a large number of Tuscarora warriors, forcing most of the surviving tribe to migrate north and join the Iroquois Confederacy. This resulted in a major loss for the Tuscarora people, with many being captured and enslaved by the colonists. Key points about the Tuscarora War. Cause of the war. Growing tensions between the Tuscarora tribe and European settlers in North Carolina due to land encroachment, unfair trade practices, and the enslavement of Native Americans. Major event, the capture and execution of Surveyor General John Lawson by the Tuscarora, which sparked the war. Battle of Neohoroka, the decisive battle where colonial forces overwhelmed the Tuscarora stronghold, leading to a large number of casualties among the tribe. Outcome, the Tuscarora were defeated, with many captured and sold into slavery, and the majority of the remaining tribe migrated north to join the Iroquois League. The Fox Wars were a series of conflicts between the Fox, Meskwaki, Native American tribe, and the French colonial forces in the early 18th century, primarily in the Great Lakes region, where the Fox fiercely resisted French expansion and control over the fur trade, leading to numerous battles and ultimately the decimation of the Fox population with the help of other allied native tribes fighting alongside the French. This resulted in heavy casualties for the Fox and forced them to eventually flee the area. Key points about the Fox Wars. Who was involved? The Fox tribe, also known as the Meskwaki, fought against the French colonial forces and their allied Native American tribes, including the Ottawa, Huron, and Menominee. Where it happened, the battles primarily took place in the area around the Great Lakes, particularly in present-day Wisconsin. Reasons for the conflict. The Fox resisted French attempts to control the fur trade in the region, which disrupted their traditional way of life and led to tensions with French traders. Key events. Guerrilla warfare. The Fox employed hit-and-run tactics against French outposts and traders, causing significant disruption. Sieges and attacks. The French, along with their allies, launched attacks on Fox settlements, including the notable siege of Little Butte des Morts. Heavy losses for the Fox. Due to the combined forces against them, the Fox suffered significant casualties, leading to their displacement and decline. End result, the Fox were eventually forced to retreat from their territory and were significantly weakened by the wars, leading to their dispersal across different regions.